Hello again, friends. So this is A Look in the Dark, Chapter 7, the record, and it's the second part of Chapter 7. You remember that Danny's, or Carol's sister's husband, the traffic cop, had sent information revealing facts about Major Stanhurst. That would arrive in the post. Next morning, as Danny went to lift the post, he noticed a handwritten note on the mat, obviously not delivered by the mailman. It was from Sir Richard Claymore and read as follows. My dear friends, I'm passing through very early this morning and didn't want to wake the happy, slumbering dreamers. If you can please meet me tonight in the Rose and Crown at Limpley Stoke, I will plan to be there at 8, but if you're unable to be there, I'll contact you soon. Also, I want to remind you not to skimp on the expenses. Ricky. Danny passed the note to his wife across the breakfast table, and she expressed amazement at the poor writing. She thought about a friend of hers who had also attended public school, and her writing was the most perfect she'd ever seen. All those years at Eton and he writes like that? Well, that's us out for the evening then. Carol noticed her husband had opened the envelope the postman had brought and wasn't listening to a word she was saying. Danny's brow was creased into a frown that only appeared when he was finding something exceptionally interesting. She waited patiently and watched silently as his eyes worked slowly down the first page. She could hardly contain herself, though, because she wanted to know what kind of man they were dealing with. The sheets of paper before Danny Green were indeed very revealing. John David Fuller had been born in Cardiff, Wales in November 1940 to an English father and a Welsh mother. When he was 6, the family had moved to Croydon, where the father had found work. There had been a couple of siblings, but the family was hardly a place of marital bliss, more marital mayhem. The children were in and out of care, mostly to protect them from the physically abusive parents. By the time John David had joined the army at 17, he had a very cynical view of life and found it hard to trust anyone. At one of his disciplinary hearings in the forces, he'd been described as a young man full of resentment and bitterness, with a view of the world twisted into unreasonable suspicion and unfounded aggression. Danny was wondering if Fuller's brother and sister had turned out the same, or had they gone on to live normal lives despite the unhappy beginnings. After Fuller's 2 years national service, he found himself back in civvy life and soon was in conflict with authority again. In 1959, he found himself in court after an incident in which a police officer was stabbed. However, it was his accomplice who wielded the flick knife, and the court accepted that Fuller was not responsible for that. He was implicated in the burglary the police intercepted, but was cleared due to insufficient evidence. His friend was jailed. 12 months later, Fuller was arrested for handling stolen goods, some items of jewellery and some cigarettes. After the sentence for this was over, he seemed even more set in the world of crime, and some of his new comrades were established, hardened criminals. His activities were wound up a notch or two. Petty crime was no longer for him, and he spent about 50% of the next few years in custody, while the victims of his crimes worked, paid taxes, and supported his chosen lifestyle. In 1977, Fuller and 4 others had tried to rob a security van on a busy street in Kingston-on-Thames, but due to a tip-off, the police knew where and when the robbery would be taking place. Also, a truck driver who saw what was happening blocked off the road of escape. John Fuller tried to break away on foot and ran straight into the arms of the law. The shotgun found in the back of the getaway car could be forensically matched with Fuller, and the prison sentence that followed connected him and his co-robbers to 3 other security van raids. He served over 8 years of his sentence, and it was while he was in Parkhurst prison on the Isle of Wight that his passion for history began. It was suspected that much of the crime in the area west of London had been under Fuller's control, and indeed that it continued to be even after his incarceration. 3 months after his arrest, the man, John Jazzman Stokes, well known to the police, was found lying in some bushes at Maidenhead Thicket with 1 bullet hole in his head. Newspaper speculation was that he'd been the informer who caused the Kingston robbery attempt to lead to Fuller's successful arrest. The word in the criminal underworld was that Fuller had ordered that the Jazzman be eliminated, and that one of the crime leader's hard men had been paid to murder the informer. It was also widely believed that Fuller was delighted with his later move to Dartmoor prison, as it put him in touch with several of his old friends. By the time he was released, Fuller had a history degree and had irritated both staff and inmates with his endless lectures about all things Norman, and especially William the Conqueror. The criminal fraternity had nicknamed him the Conk due to his obsession with its Norman ruler. His release came in June 1979, and the Conk disappeared to Spain for the next 2 years. It was known to the police that whilst being resident in Spain, he had travelled the world a fair bit in that couple of years, but as far as laying blame for anything at his door, there was no evidence about anything criminal. There was a very strong air of suspicion when his fellow armed raiders disappeared, one by one. True, Hubert Smith, who'd been the driver in the failed robbery in Kingston, did die of natural causes before finishing his sentence. Not so natural, though, was the death of Peter Clayton, bullet wounds usually being considered by pathologists as beyond the normal causes of life ceasing. Clayton's damaged remains were found in a disused quarry. Fuller, alias Stanhurst, nicknamed the Conk, was not in Britain at the time of his death, but it was considered that someone had acted on his orders. The suspicion grew when Jake Mullins was washed up on the North Wales coast one stormy morning with his hands tied behind his back. Within 6 months, Ian Talbot had disappeared, and nobody, including his wife, could account for his vanishing. It was some months later that his body was found in the undergrowth along a river in the New Forest. The miracles of forensic science cannot raise the dead, but they did reveal that this youngest gang member had been shot in the chest at a very close range. Fuller had actually written to the police in Hampshire complaining that their country was not safe, and suggesting that they study the methods of William of Normandy as regards law enforcement. Both Hampshire police and the men at Scotland Yard would have liked to try Norman methods on Stanhurst and learn how he had eliminated all other claims to the hidden cash from several robberies, while he did not get his own hands dirty and retained the perfect alibi because he was living in Spain. When he returned from Spain, Fuller became involved in legitimate business ventures, even if they were somewhat obscure as to their real purpose. And it was obvious that he was living beyond the means that these commercial enterprises could be expected to retain. Those involved in law enforcement would have liked to track down the loot from the earlier illegal adventures, but could not do so. Also, there was a measure of vagueness about those trips he made to various parts of the world. Fuller had been all over the place. Were these trips just for pleasure? The various ideas that Fuller set up seemed to go from the bizarre to the unimaginable. There had been buying and selling of pre-1960s radios, which lasted a year. This was followed by the Doomsday Historical Advisory Service. The police kept an eye on his activities, but could not find even as much as a motoring offence. There was information too about the bookfinding business based in the Clapham area of London. His advertisements appeared in publications for those involved in the antiquarian book trade, and some of the book fair types had come to know the somewhat arrogant Major Stanhurst. He had a bit of a reputation for getting what they wanted, but by hard bargaining if necessary, not by any illegal foul means. Had James David Fuller gone straight? The men at Metropolitan Police Headquarters in London very seriously doubted that. So there's the information that was sent by Dave, the traffic cop relation in Leeds, down to Danny and Carol in Frome, Somerset in the west of England. So what would they do now? What did they have? Well, they knew the kind of man they were dealing with, very dangerous. They also knew that he had a bookfinding business in Clapham in London. What would they do? Next time we begin to find out. Thanks for listening again. Please continue. I appreciate so much that you'll even listen to my stories. It's nice to share it with you, and I hope you're all well and all happy. Love from Kate and myself. Bye-bye. Bye.